Yo, what is good? Welcome back to another episode of the Chill Taste Podcast. I'm your host, Darian. And as you can see in the title, Wild Card Weekend. NFL playoffs are officially here. It's a lot to get into, a lot to discuss. My team, your team, if you're watching this, if you're a fan of this team, are in the playoffs. The Jacksonville Jaguars and many other teams out there fighting for Super Bowl LX. I'm excited. I can't really put into words how ready I am for this postseason run. I mean, I know it sounds a bit far fetched if you're not plugged into Jaguar news, not plugged into Jaguar football, but for people in this city, we believe maybe not a championship ring will be placed on our fingers, but a lot of us believe we will be at this game come February in the Bay Area. So let's get right into the show, man. Now I will say this is a full breakdown of all NFL games happening this weekend for Wildcard Weekend. So if you are a Jaguars fan, I will save the best for last. I will talk about my team, our team, in depth towards the end of this podcast. So if you want to hang around and listen, I greatly appreciate it. But if not, go ahead and skip to the end, and I will give a more in-depth discussion about these Jags. So, but anyways, before I get into this, though, I want to say thank you so much for the people out there subscribing to the pod, to the channel, whatever this is I'm doing right now. We're plus 400 subs right now. I love that. Videos are getting a lot of love. Comments are going crazy. Well, I'm lying. They're not going crazy. But, there's traction, right? You know what I'm saying? The shorts are doing well. So I really appreciate all those who have been rocking with me, coming over from the networks I've been collaborating with the Happy Hour Sports team, Jungle Beat Pod, so on and so forth, man. I thank y'all for tapping in. But for those who don't know, I do cover the Jaguars, mainly on the channel. I'm an NFL fan. I'm a Jaguar fan. So as we trickle more into the playoffs and also to the postseason, you're going to see more broader NFL content. But nevertheless, though, we're talking about the Jags at the end of the pod. Let's get right into it, though. I'm going to zoom in on my browser so you can see the picks I'm going to make for Wildcard Weekend. So hopefully you can see it on the channel. It's a lot of fun games. We start things off Saturday. The first game may be a snoozer, Panthers and Rams, but I'm gonna give my takeaway on who I believe will win and go from there. Right. So Rams and Panthers. This is going to be a game where the 8-9 Panthers are going up against the 12-5 Rams, 11-6 Rams. I'm quite sure they're 12-5. They are the 6th seed, but they are a really talented and stout 6-seeded team. And the reason why they're a 6-seeded team because, unfortunately, they're a 5th-seeded team. They are 12-5. And the reason why they are the 5th-seeded team is because they lost the last matchup between the Seahawks, and the Seahawks strung off straight wins against both the Panthers, Rams, and Niners to close out the season. And, of course, they are the number 1 seed in the NFC playoff race, and the playoffs do run through Seattle, the 12th man, a very tough environment to play in. And if I'm not mistaken, the last times the Seattle Seahawks have been the 1 seed in the playoffs, they have made it to the Super Bowl. So keep that in mind as you make your predictions. We'll talk about Seattle next week. We're going to focus on these games this upcoming week. So Saturday, I want to say that is the 4 p.m. game. I think it'll be on Amazon Prime, if I'm not mistaken. They're kind of regulating those people to the Amazon Prime network. But Rams and Panthers, this is a game that's, I think it's minus 10.5 as of right now for the Rams. But, if a month ago, the Panthers pulled off a huge upset that really, kickstarted their season into where they are right now. Now, granted, they did lose some games to close out this year. They lost to the Buccaneers. They lost to the Seahawks. And that Seahawks loss was a bit understandable, but that Buccaneers game was a bit ugly to watch. I think they also lost to the Saints to close out this year as well. So, they come into this postseason 8-9. I think the last 8-9 team to make it in the NFC playoffs may have been the Panthers, but they won their first round game. Forgot who they played against, but of course, Cam Newton was there. And the honorary pounder of the drum in Carolina this Saturday will be none other, number 1, Cam Newton. So the crowd is going to be ruckus. They're going to be hyped up. This is the first playoff game in Carolina, in Queen City, since like 2016, 15, I want to say. Right? So it's been a long time coming. So that crowd will be amped up. And I truthfully think they can keep this Panthers team in this game for at least the first 2 quarters. I know it may not sound achievable, but I do believe they can keep this game close for at least up until halftime, right? The crowd will be into it. And also, the reason on how they beat the Rams last time is that they were able to run the ball, pretty heavy, against this Rams defense. I started kind of trickling towards, that I wouldn't say inexcusable play, but very questionable play. Once they faced off against the Panthers, I think Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard had some solid performances against that team defensively. And that was a game where their defense was able to force Matthew Stafford into, like, I want to say 2 turnovers, and one of them being a pick six to Mike Jackson. So, that was a game where no one had the Panthers as winners, and they came out victorious. Now, of course, it is very hard to beat a team twice in one season, let alone a team that everyone believes is going to be in the championship come February. But it's possible. However, I don't see it happening because this Rams team is getting healthier at the right time. You're going to have Devontae Adams back. He has that unk injury right now. I think he's dealing with like a hamstring or something, or a bad back, something of that nature. But it's a bit unky with his injury, but he'll be here. All right, Puka Nacua will be ready. Kyron Williams will be ready. Even guys like Blake Corum at the backfield will be ready, right? You're starting to see the emergence of someone like Terrence Ferguson in this tight end room for the Rams. And also they still have guys like Parkinson, and also I think Higbee is injured. But, they have some pieces in this offense outside of Puka and Devontae you have to worry about. And of course, MVP Matthew Stafford, he's playing on a heater right now. Not really to close out the year, but he responded well in that Cardinals game, and I think they feed off that. And plus, Sean McVay, man, I trust him head to head over someone like Dave Canales anyway. So I think the Rams pull it out mid-third quarter. I think the final score will be like, they'll string off some scores in the game. I think it'll be like 31-17. That's my prediction, right? I think for the only reason I do believe if there is a way the Panthers can win this game is that if they force turnovers, and of course, they run the ball effectively and they get their playmakers involved. This is going to be a game where Tetsuo McMillan has a, coming out party in the playoffs. They're going to get the best out of Bryce Young, most importantly. And also, they have to be able to find ways to stay ahead of the chains. They can't play from behind. They can't play 3rd and 10, 2nd and 14, so on and so forth. They must stay ahead of the chains. And even then, they still need some luck to be on their side because the Rams are just that much of a better team, in my opinion. But I am going with the Rams, third quarter to pull away, and it'll be a final score 31-17. Moving on to the Bears. Actually, we'll go ahead and mark my bracket. Bears, Packers, the nightcap of Saturday football. This is going to be one to watch, in my opinion. It's going to be a very fun game. Both of these teams, at one point this year, you may have circled them as, the Packers especially, as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Injuries happen, of course. And as for the Bears, they were winning these one-score games, but at some point this year, they started having that separation of, okay, like this team is starting to turn the corner at the right time, but they did lose some tough ones to close out the year. Most notably to the Niners on the road. Now it was a shootout, but they lost that game, unfortunately. And also most recently to the Lions. And I think that Lions loss is more of a stinger than that Niners one, in my opinion, because losing to the Lions is one thing, right? That's your division opponent, right? They haven't beat the Lions, I want to say, twice in the season in the last 3 years or so. And also, Dan Campbell seems to have Ben Johnson's number right now. But we'll talk about that later. But as of right now, I will say that is a bit iffy, but they do have some good wins against the Seahawks. They have to have some wins against the Eagles. Who else they beat this year? They beat the Packers, of course. No Jordan Love, but they still beat the Packers, and that's going to be big in this game right here. And they also beat, I want to say, I don't have their schedule up here in front of me right now. I know they have another good win this year, but neither here nor there. The Bears do have some quality wins. I'm sorry for those that are listening, like, oh, you don't know the Bears wins this year? I know the best one of the season is definitely the Eagles, one of the best wins. So, but it's going to be a snowed out game. This is going to be a very, as you say on like Madden, when you're playing the game and you go into these matchups and it's like a little trigger that says, how to prepare for this matchup, and you click on the low button, you click on the segue, and you're finding out that you're playing in a snow game. You're like, fuck, bro, I want to restart this game. That's exactly how this game is going to be, man. Snowy. I don't know if it's going to be windy, but if it's in Soldier Field and it's snowing, best believe it'll be windy. I think this is going to be a game where whoever wins has to be able to run the ball effectively and also limit turnovers. And play the most sound defense. I think both these defenses are pretty fraudulent. Not really fraudulent. I couldn't even say that because I think we all know they're bad. Neither one of these defenses are world beaters, in my opinion, especially with the injuries the Packers have had as of late. The Packers did go out there and grab Trayvon Diggs, but I mean, Trayvon Diggs is not what he used to be, in my opinion, right? And then you have their pass rush with Rashawn Gary, who's been very lackluster, and no Michael Parsons. You have the linebacking core of Quay Walker and Adrian Cooper, but at the same time, though, is it enough, right? You have Xavier McKinney back there still. You have Keyshawn Nixon, who has had a slump of a season to close out this year. But, can it be enough against Ben Johnson and his weapons? Because we all saw last game where it felt as if the Packers had a sizable control of this game, and fourth quarter they blew it. Now, granted, Malik Willis is playing, so you may not see that same type of collapse with Jordan Love at the helm, but nevertheless, though, it happened, right? And their DBs got exposed because Caleb Williams got hot in that fourth quarter, right? But it's different this time around because Jay Love should play the full game. That is the last game he played, and I'm quite sure he's looking at this like, okay, well, we own the Bears. If you're a Bears fan, the Packers own you, unfortunately, right? And is something about when a team has that edge over you, even when you may be the better team on paper. It's just sometimes you don't come out to play your best ball and you end up losing because that team just has that juju or that voodoo over you, whatever you want to say, right? And that can happen in football, even in playoff like atmospheres, right? However, I do say with the weather being on the Packers side, even though with the weather being on the Bears side, even though the Packers are, known to play in some cold ass weather as well, I kind of want to say the Bears can potentially outlast the Packers because I think they have the more lethal running back room. We don't know the health of Josh Jacobs right now. I saw a report that said something about Josh Jacobs, how he's been pretty much injured since week 6 and he's been dealing with it, right? And you're starting to see it become more apparent as these weeks have come to an end to get to the playoffs. And I think their last matchup, really to close out this year, I think in week 17, he only had like 3 carries, right? And I think week 18, he didn't play, so he's going to be a bit more healthier, right? But you're not going to get 100% Josh Jacobs. However, I think Kyle Monunga and DeAndre Swift pose a bigger threat to this Packers defense. And, this Packers defense is okay at stopping the run, but when you have a two-headed monster in the backfield like that, you can get active, especially with Caleb Williams being a legitimate runner at the quarterback position himself. I'm leaning more towards the Bears. And my prediction right here, I had the Packers, but I just had to I had to realize that, yes, Josh Jacobs is not healthy enough. And Emmanuel Wilson is a good backup, but can he carry a load in a game, in a playoff-like game? And of course, you have the receivers out there for Green Bay who pose huge threats in the passing attack, but it's snowing, right? They may not be able to air it out like they want to and have to focus on running the football. But, if they can't run the ball effectively with possibly RB2 for the bulk of this game, I think the Bears phase out pretty well. I'm a big fan of Emmanuel Wilson, right? But, I think the Bears can do enough defensively to kind of just hold that in. And I think Dennis Allen called a good game against the Lions. I just think the Lions defense showed up and made bigger plays than, the Bears offense. And as for this Bears offense, I think Caleb Williams in his first playoff game, which is big as well. He must notify that. He has to be able to, I wouldn't say be Superman or even Iceman in this game per se. I think he definitely needs to play with more precision, more accuracy, more on time, more like I don't want to say up the par because it sounds a bit disrespectful, but he has to take it up a notch, right? Because in the regular season, there's been times where Caleb has gone ghost and he doesn't show up to the fourth quarter. And I don't believe in the playoffs you can afford that, especially in round 1 against a team that has known to have your number for some years now. So I think for this for this Bears team to win, Caleb must play on time, be accurate, and also take what the defense gives him. And of course, Ben Johnson has to utilize his running attack. As for the Packers, Jordan Love, you only have one playoff win, right, in the last 3-4 years as you a starter. I think that's nothing to, kind of, worry about, but it is pretty interesting given the fact that, a lot of people toggle him as arguably the second best quarterback in the NFC right behind Matthew Stafford, and yet he doesn't have the playoff accomplishments to show that. Without question, I believe this is a game that he can definitely win, but will he be able to, right? We'll see. I think the Bears are a bit more healthier. And also, I think their team just plays a bit more energetic and confident at home. So I'm going to take the Bears at the crib, Soldier Field. And Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson grabbed their first wins as head coach and player as they enter round 2. So I'll go ahead and put that on the playoff check off, right? And we'll move on to, I can't talk about that Sunday game yet. I'll say that for last. Jags and Bills are the 1 p.m. games. So let's talk about that. What was that? 4:30 game? Eagles, Niners. I should have just went NFC, AFC, right? But Eagles and Niners. This is a good one right here too. I found myself thinking like, damn, do the Niners actually have a legitimate chance at not just winning this game, but making it to the bowl this year? And I thought they did, right? I really did. Prior to that Seahawks game, I said, man, this Niners team can really, make some noise, right? I think Brock Purdy is playing his best football to close out the year. He has some great games against the Bears, Colts, and the Cardinals to close out the season. But then I started paying more attention to the Niners, and I said, "Damn, this defense, man, it doesn't have the horses, and they've been hurt, right? It's a lot of guys on the defense has been in the blue tent, and also their offense this year has not been the healthiest either. And I think when they're missing key players like Ricky Pearsall, although many out there may not know all the impact that Ricky Pearsall, gives for this team, if I'm not mistaken, whenever he plays, he goes for at least 50 yards, and they're really impactful yards. And he's also creating a lot of separation, broadening the field and being more of an emphasis, drawing in, certain zone coverages and whatnot, where George Kittle can feast and CMC can feast underneath. But not having that ability to stretch the field or even have a guy that can create separation at the line of scrimmage, it kind of bottles up your offense. We saw that against the Seahawks team. They just sat on everything. Granted, that is a divisional opponent, but the Eagles have a defense that is very similar to what the Seahawks can run. A lot of man press, a lot of getting after the passer with 4, and also linebackers that can move sideline to sideline and be gap fillers to shut down CMC. And if Trent Williams isn't playing either, that Eagles defensive line can control the line of scrimmage and really make life hell for Kyle Shanahan and his offense, and really force Brock Purdy to beat you. And we've seen Brock Purdy throughout this season, even though he had a hot streak to close out this year. When Brock Purdy has been dared to throw the football, he has been very careless, to say the least. All right, we remember that Panthers game a few Monday Night Footballs back, right? And granted, he's played way better since then, but you catch my drift. And I really want to beat the Niners because this Eagles offense doesn't move me. They don't move me at all, right? I think to close out this year, they didn't play their best football. In a game where I thought Nick Sirianni kind of played a little bit when he could have got for the second seed, and it may come back to haunt him in this playoff run. And you sat as starters, right? I mean, and that's a game that you could have used as a tune-up. Granted, you don't want nobody to get hurt, but your offense has been so inconsistent to close out this year, and you want to enter the playoffs on somewhat of a streak. And I think that Commanders game was more than winnable, and yet they went out there with Tanner McGee and Tank Bigsby, and of course those backups played serviceable. It wasn't enough because they lost. Right. So, but this Eagles offense, I mean, I know Jalen Hurts, he shows up big in big time games, and we know moments are, big time moments, and he's provided some good to elite play. I'm sorry, well, yeah, good to elite play, right? He hasn't been bad, but he's definitely shown some good to elite play in the Super Bowl games. He's been elite in the conference championship games. He's been, great. In those wild card matchups, like I remember last year against, who was it? The Rams? It had to be the Rams in the divisional round. He was okay, but he responded well in the conference championship, and he balled out in the Super Bowl. So, I trust Jalen Hurts for the most part, but do I trust the play calling? Do I trust this offensive line to, pretty much get their head out of their asses and play better football? Because this has not been the offensive line in Philly we've been accustomed to seeing, right? Lane Johnson's been that dude. Mwanga, I'm probably butchering his name, has been that guy as well, right? Their guard. But, guys up front, they're center. And, of course, you guys got like Leonard Dickinson. He has been playing because he's been hurt. They're not really moving people that we were accustomed to seeing. And that's a huge part of why Saquon Barkley has not been able to, really truly be himself, But I will say I'm leaning more towards the Eagles because, one, they have the better defense. And I think that defense can do enough to stop what the Niners want to do on offense. And I think that's going to pay off big time, especially in a game where Kyle Shanahan is going to try to put his best foot forward. But I think that Vic Fangio can have an answer for everything. They match it really well, too. You're going to have guys like Quinyon Mitchell, guarding Juwan Jennings. You're going to have Cooper DeJean following whoever's in that slot role, whether it was DeMarcus Robinson or, they may even put Kittle in that slot or even CMC and, opportunities in the slot and so on and so forth. I think this I think this Niners team is a bit limited on what they can do offensively. And I'm sorry, I was thinking about the Eagles offensive lineman name and it stuck with me and I wanted to get his name right. Jordan Mailata. Sorry about that. I knew it was something around that verbiage of him. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just feel as if this Niners team, maybe if they had a bit more, maybe if their defense was a bit healthy, maybe if they have Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, I would say, okay, the Niners have a great shot at winning this game. But with the inability to, possibly get stops in key moments, man, I just don't see this Niners team coming out on the top. So even though their defense played really solid against the Seahawks last week, and like I said, divisional games that happens at times, right? Those teams know each other very well. But going on the road in colder weather, more than likely, in Philly, against a team that can really just lull you to sleep, and next thing you know, like it's 17-3, and it's been like that the whole entire game, and you really can't move because the defense is suffocating your offense. And last week we saw that with the Seahawks, and last week, I mean, the Niners couldn't score a single damn offensive point. They finished with 3 points, and that can very much well happen the following week. And I think it's just due to the fact that the Niners just don't have enough on offense right now. And I don't think Brock Purdy, by any stretch of the means, is a Superman-like quarterback to uplift his team's deficiencies in the playoffs against the defending champs, the Philadelphia Eagles, unfortunately. So give me the Eagles at home. And yeah, Sunday night, Chargers, Patriots. This is a game that you can argue is one of the better wild card matchups of the week, aside from Bills and Jags, and I'll get into that towards the end. But this is a very interesting game from the standpoint of more so the pressure being on the Chargers. Although the Patriots had a phenomenal season, they're the 2 seed. They finished 14-3. Drake May, had an MVP like year, and he may very well win MVP. Mike Vrabel very may well win Coach of the Year. Right, they've had a lot of great players this year, some All-Pro guys, some Pro Bowl guys. I'm quite sure when those things get accommodated and whatnot, you'll see more alternative teams going out there. This is a game where, in my opinion, it still weighs heavy on the Chargers. I think the Chargers defense can keep them in this matchup. I think the Chargers offense is where I have my biggest questions. The Chargers offensive line, as we all know, is unhealthy, and it is pretty terrible to watch. Although they're going up against one of the more weaker defensive lines in football. However, Milton Williams is set to be playing. He's not the healthiest right now, but he is set to be playing. And if Milton Williams is playing, I think the Chargers just don't stand a chance, honestly, because he can cause so much disruption up front from a pass rushing and, most importantly, a run stuffing standpoint. And that is exactly what the Chargers are going to try to do. Of course, they can throw the ball all around the yard. And Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman want to try their hardest to establish a running attack, rather if it's with Omarion Hampton or Vidal. Kimani Vidal, I think that's his name. So, and we don't even know if Omarion Hampton will be the healthiest right now because he is dealing with an ankle injury. And it's not the same ankle injury that's kept him out for prior to a few weeks ago, damn near a month of football. But it's his other ankle, and that's not good for a running back that, has some ability to get loose in open field and also is a downhill runner. But, it is not comfortable, right? And granted, no one's comfortable during this time of the year from an injury standpoint. But, some outweigh the others. So this is going to be a game where Justin Herbert has to put on a Superman cape and save his team once again, like he's been doing pretty much all season. The thing is, though, can he actually do it? And that's my biggest question. So far in his playoffs career, his tenure in the league, it's been a combination of extremely terrible, underwhelming play, and also just not doing enough. The blown lead against the Jaguars in 2022, and then last year against the Texans, getting belt to ass and him playing arguably the worst game of his career. I will say, though, sometimes the third time's a charm. And I think this year could very well be the year he gets the monkey off his back and wins his first playoff game. It's a lot of pressure. Everyone's counting them out. But, given his defense and what they can do, and, I feel as if this Patriots team, and I don't like to harp on scheduling that much, but they don't have a winning record against winning teams this year. It's like 2-3, nothing crazy, but still, something to keep in mind. And they have struggled against defenses that, have the stoutier, more defensive fronts. Really defenses in general. They haven't faced many this year, don't get me wrong, but the ones they have faced, they struggled, right? If I can think off the top of my head right now, I know the Falcons gave them some issues with their defense, and the Falcons give a lot of teams issues on defense, surprisingly enough. The Bills, of course, they gave them some issues, right? They split with them. And also, who was their other loss this year? It was the Steelers. I want to say they faced the Steelers, and the Steelers caused some issues for them. And the Steelers have one of the better defenses in football. So, like I said, they haven't crossed many paths with, good to great or even elite defenses this year. And I do believe the Chargers have a great defense, right? They do a lot of chaos up front, led by Poona Ford, Khalil Mack, the linebackers and Denzel Perryman. I think he should be playing in this game, but also someone like Hanley. Love his game a lot. Then you have their corners and Adoree Jackson. I'm sorry, not Adoree Jackson. Deontay Jackson. Sorry. Deontay Jackson and Talib, really sound corner. Then you got the safety play of Derwin James. And also they have someone like Odofe Owe up front who can really, cause some havoc from a pass rushing standpoint as well. Not from a crazy, pressure standpoint, but he can really, make it up a bit. Now, the thing about it is, though, I don't think Josh McDaniels is going to dare Drake May to go out there and throw for 300 plus yards. He's going to try to use the running attack, and the running attack has gotten very strong towards the back half of this season. You have players like Ramondre Stevenson, Travion Henderson. They've been playing some really good football to close out this year, and although they don't have the skill position players you would like to see from a receiving standpoint, still Stephon Diggs is more than capable of, having a game where he can go for 145 or 130 or even something like 80 and 3 touchdowns, So this is going to be a very fun one to watch. It's going to be a head coaching chess match, a, quarterback chess match, and also a trench chess match. How can this Patriots defensive line affect this terrible Chargers offensive line? But, the Patriots defensive line, I think they're like tied for, in a point, or a sack difference, like one of the worst in football. So, it's a lot of, interesting battles in between the lines in this matchup. If I had to choose, though, right now, and my pick could very much well change Sunday night, but I think I'm leaning more towards the Chargers. And I say that because I just think that with so many people counting them out, with so much pressure on this team, I think they respond. I do really believe they respond. I think they're an underrated team that maybe not get hot in the playoffs, but they can knock off a contender. And I think they could knock off this Patriots team that is relatively very new to this, a bit novice to this, wet behind the ears with this. However you want to say this in a very simple term of them saying that they're not ready yet, as they shouldn't be, and I'm not expecting Drake May to go in there and, lose his mind in the playoffs, but I can definitely see him, having a bit of a struggle. And where Herbert, he's been able to learn and sit and say, hey, I know how to attack this defense in the postseason. I know how to not make this grave mistake I made before. Like if I'm up 21 in this game, I'm not blowing this lead. You know what I'm saying? So I think I trust the Chargers vets more than the Patriots youth in their key areas, if that makes sense. So give me the Chargers and possibly a Cam Dicker game-winning field goal or go-ahead field goal. All right, Texans, Steelers, Monday Night Football. I won't spend too much time talking on this one because, honestly, this probably won't be much of a closer game. If it is a close game, it's going to be an ugly, boring playoff game. Granted, I don't think football is boring to watch at times, but it's going to be a defensive game in my opinion. And I think whoever may can score a defensive touchdown wins this matchup, in my opinion. I think this is going to be a 20 to 30 or 6 type of game where, you're going to have teams, trading field goals, and the Texans, go up top with Nico Collins and Stroud, and they, put up an extra 7 points, and they get more field goals, and they finish with like 23, 21 points. So it'll be a dominating win for the Texans, in my opinion, where I think the Steelers team will give them a very tough fight. They'll keep it close, but I would say towards the end of the third quarter, early fourth, the Texans will pull away. And this could be a game where Aaron Rodgers is dropping like dead flies in this matchup, man. I think like he's not going to be able to scrum around like that. He's old. He's 41 years old. They're going to have to Neil Hunter and Will Henderson Jr. Lined up on opposing sides. It's going to be very tough to really make things shake versus that front. Also, the corners, Kamari Lassiter, Derek Stingley Jr., the safety play of Jalen Petrie, Bullock, and whatnot. This is a very tough defense to really get active on. And not to mention, you have Henry Tuatua and Azeez Al-Shaair in the linebacker room, right? But I will say the keys to how the Steelers can win this matchup is, one, being able to utilize the running backs effectively. I think their offense has been keyed off the running attack. Their running backs being receivers at the backfield as well, right? Their backs are the bread and butter to their offense, right? Jalen Warren and also Kenneth Gainwell. They've been very effective this year. Also, being able to utilize DK Metcalf in situations, right? They got to be able to get their star receiver to football. He's been out for 2 weeks. I know he's hungry to get back out there and make some plays for his team. And also Aaron Rodgers, hey, if it's coming down to the wire and, A-Rod has the ball with 1:30 left and they're only down by 2 scores, or, need to get in field goal range to go in overtime, or even possibly win this game with Chris Boswell, hey, man, I can see it happening, because we just saw last week against the Ravens in non-typical fashion, but still it happened, right? I mean, he had a, walk-off touchdown, damn near, to Calvin Austin. So, granted, this defense are going up against is way light years better than the Ravens defense. But nevertheless, though, Mike Tomlin has not won a playoff game since 2017. 2016 has been a very, very long time. They say all streaks must come to an end, and, Mike Tomlin is long overdue. Will he get it this year? Probably not, but he's long overdue. But I'm riding with the Texans. I think they pull away early fourth quarter, and, they pretty much just make it very difficult for the Steelers to do anything offensively. And it's going to be a Texans defensive win like we've been seeing pretty much throughout the entire back half of this season. All right, moving on to, in my opinion, the game of Wildcard Weekend, Jags and Bills. If you skip to the end, thank you so much for tapping in. Appreciate your listen. Appreciate your like. Appreciate your sub. Appreciate the follow. Appreciate the comments. But this, in my opinion, is the game of the week. I need to update my chart. I'm tripping. I had Eagles, I had Chargers, and I got Texans. Sorry, y'all. Anyways, game of the week. Jags, Bills. Ooh-wee. This is going to be a very fun game, in my opinion. I've been saying fun a lot in this podcast, but I truly mean it. This is going to be a very fun game. How the Bills could win, before I even get into the Jags, how the Bills could win. Well, they are the Bills. They are the Buffalo Bills. They've been to the playoffs, 7 consecutive years right now. They have arguably the best quarterback in the playoffs. They have arguably the best quarterback in football. Whoever you're talking to, they may argue that, right? But I'm just saying, they have the reigning MVP. They have the vets. They have the continuity. They have the experience. They have all these things going for them. And, of course, everyone's out there just, the AFC's wide open. The NFC's wide open. When we look 20 years from now, we're not going to sit up here and say the 2025 Jaguars were a juggernaut of a team, or we're not going to say the 2025 Broncos were the juggernaut of a team, because there's no Mahomes, there's no Joe Burrow, there's no Lamar Jackson. But I'm going to tell you right now, everyone is penciling in the Bills kind of like throwing a dart at the wall hoping it sticks, because there's no other competition out there in their eyes, right? So everyone's penciling the Bills as if they can win this game, they're getting to the playoffs, getting to the championship game. And arguably, I do believe that, right? If they do win this game, that means Josh Allen is about to go on a run we've never seen before. I can say that before this game kicks off. So the Bills, they definitely win this game, right? And at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? That's what they're going to say, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars. It's just at the end of the day, great season, but it's fluky. They're getting ahead of themselves. The fans are getting to it. Super Bowl, what? Jacksonville? Nah, they're getting ahead of themselves. Give me the Bills. That sounds good. Really good, right? And that's my keys to how the Bills could win. And of course, being able to utilize the running attack with Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, and most importantly, the leading rusher in football, James Cook. And Josh Allen can definitely put on that cape and backpack this team to victory. And of course, the Jaguars could lay down and be like, damn, we're experiencing Josh Allen and James Cook right now. All right. And the Jaguars could implode. Trevor Lawrence could revert back to his old ways. Liam Cohen can, have a rookie mistake as a head coach and call it a disaster of a game, and Sean McDermott can coach circles around him. It could very well happen. But in my opinion, it won't. It won't. It won't, because when you take off your Jaguars stench from the last 10 years, when you remove the Trevor Lawrence fumbles and interceptions from the last 5 years, when you sit back and just scrub away the disaster of the secondary play and the rush defense getting gashed by Derrick Henry for the last 10 years, when you remove all of that funk and stench and you look at the numbers, and you look at how this team has played to close out this season, the last 8 games during this 8-game winning streak, you realize, in comparisons to the Buffalo Bills, the Jacksonville Jaguars are indeed the better team. They're 13-4. The Bills are 12-5. I get that, but the Jaguars are clearly the better team. They've been playing the better football, and 9 times out of 10, at least for the first round, at least, whoever is entering the postseason the hottest and they have that first round game, they typically come out on top. I want to say, there's probably not a number behind it, but I want to say at least 80% of the time, especially if they're at home. I just don't see, I can see a world, don't get me wrong, but I just don't see this Jaguars team losing. And I'm trying not to be biased, but I'm looking at it. They have the number 1 rush defense in football. It is no fluke. They've gone against some very stout running offenses. They shut Jonathan Taylor down. They have shut in teams like the Chargers down. They have shut in I'm trying to think who else can run the ball effectively in the games we played. The Broncos, they're not really a great running offense, but still, they've shut down teams in the running department where you may say, damn, they have a really good running team, and the Bills, of course, haven't faced the number 1 team, but this Bills offense has been well documented throughout this year that James Cook has arguably been their best player and their MVP and arguably their best offensive player on this year's team, on this iteration of the Buffalo Bills. In my honest opinion, whenever he goes for over 100 yards from scrimmage, they win. I think they've only lost 1 time when he has gone for over 100 yards from scrimmage, and that was, I want to say, I'm sorry, it's not the stat. I'm sorry. Anytime he rushes for over 100 yards from scrimmage, they win. The only time he didn't do that, the lone win they do have, because other games he didn't do it, they lost. The lone victory they did have was week 1 against the Ravens, and that's because they were down by 20 damn points, and Josh Allen definitely backpacked that victory for sure. And granted, I know Josh Allen is a better player. I get it, all that. But this season alone, this version of the Bills, James Cook has been their most valuable player, in my opinion. But the Jaguars had the number 1 rush defense in football, so it plays right into our hands, right? And granted, I know Joe Brady is going to come into this game and try to play ball control, try to milk the clock, limit the offensive possessions for the Jaguars. You kind of saw Shane Steichen introduced that a bit, right? He tried to nickel and dime and keep the ball away from the Jaguars. And, it didn't work out, mainly because of his quarterback, right? Just being so limited. So maybe Joe Brady turns back that tape on and say, hey, there is a way we can keep this game in control, because we have to keep that offense off the field, because their offense is high power and the Jaguars are on fire right now offensively. However, I'm not sure if it'll matter, because if they do try to play keep away, it may play into our hands even more, because you're going to force Josh Allen more than likely to convert 3rd and 13s, 3rd and 14s, 3rd and 16s. And granted, he definitely can without question, but who is he throwing to? Who is he throwing to? Khalil Shakir. He's the best weapon right now. But after Khalil Shakir, I think he has close to 800 yards receiving this year. After Khalil, their second leading receiver is Keon Coleman with 430-something yards. And he's been a healthy scratch all throughout this season. They have limitations in the receiving room. Granted, Brandon Cooks has had his moment to close out this year, but he's older, right? You have guys like Josh Palmer, right? You have to respect him, but still, he hasn't been a good free agency signing for this Bills team this year. You have Dawson Kincaid, who can't stay healthy. You have Dawson Knox, good tight end. Don't get me wrong, those tight ends are really good, but still, it's just not enough, right? This Jaguars team is better on paper, and I think they are the more complete team. They're playing better football right now. Trevor Lawrence is on a heater. He's arguably been the best quarterback in the NFL, aside from Matthew Stafford, and Drake May to close out this season. Offensively, they're putting up 19.9 points in their last 8 games, but they've also had games where they've won by 3 or more scores. They've been one of the hotter offenses in football without question, although they may not be able to run the ball. However, the Bills suck at stopping the run, and it's because why? Teams are saying, we don't want to throw against you. We're just going to gash it down your throat. And everyone hypes up the Bills have one of the better pass offenses in football. Yeah, they do. It's because they can't stop the run. Literally, they just cannot stop the run. So, and this is a game where the Jaguars can get back to establishing the run to open up the pass, or vice versa, right? So, I think with the Jaguars being at home, being an underdog in this game, a 1.5 point underdog, by the way, it may jump to 2. It may come down to 1. It may even be a even count come kickoff time. But nevertheless, though, the Jaguars are they are home underdogs. The home dogs. I think the Jaguars win, man. I think this is going to be a game where the Jaguars get off to a very hot start. I can see them easily going up 21-7 before halftime. Second half, they kind of like, play with their food a little bit, and the Bills do have this comeback, but it's too much. I think the Jaguars win from a score of 34-27, and the score won't truly indicate how much the Jaguars dominated in this upcoming game. So we made the Jaguars at home to close out Wildcard weekend, and they advance to play. Who would they play? The Texans, it looks like. Yeah, it'll be the Texans if I have my bracket correct. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I will say, man, I'm excited. You see my predictions right here. I have the Jags over the Bills, Chargers over Patriots, Texans over Steelers, Panthers over I have the Panthers over the Rams. I'm so sorry. No, I do not. Caught my own mistake. Rams over Panthers, Eagles over Niners, and the Bears over the Packers. So yes, man, like I said, I'm excited for this. Granted, my reaction could be very different come Sunday. I could be like, man, what the fuck, bro? I can't believe you lost, bro. But no, I don't think it will be, man. I think I'll still be in a very celebratory mode. I'm talking more playoffs with y'all, man, and seeing what the hypotheticals are going forward. So yeah, man, thank you for tapping in. I'll make sure I do a recap after this playoff weekend, no matter what. We'll talk more playoff football and also more to come, gearing up for a potential Jaguars Super Bowl run. And honestly, if we advance next round, I'll probably go deeper into how I see the rest of the playoffs shaping up, because I do believe it could potentially be a matchup between master and apprentice. Stick with me on that. Anyways, until next time, man, thank you for tapping in. This has been a fun pod. If you haven't followed already, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And I'll catch y'all on the next episode.